Well, the praise for Pope Francis is practically drowning out painful outcries from survivors of the church sex abuse scandal. Many of the victims say they feel, in a way, re-victimized by this visit. It brings up a lot of memories, especially after he praises bishops, saying they showed courage and generous commitment to the victims. Pennsylvania State Representative Mark Rossi says he was sexually molested by priests when he was just 13 years old. Here's what he told Federico Whitfield just a short time ago.
He better not be patting the bishops on the back. That's unacceptable. His other statement, he said, was he realized how much the pain of recent years has weighed upon the bishops. Are you kidding me? Is that a joke? I have 3 childhood friends who have committed suicide. That, their families are suffering. They have suffered their entire lives from this tragedy. And it's the church that has turned the back on victims. And they continue to turn their back on victims.
So this is still a very painful, very open and ongoing wound. Becky Ianni is a spokeswoman for the Survivors Network of those abused by priests. It's known as SNAP, and she's here joining us all to talk about this. Becky, as the state representative said there, this feels like a re-victimization because they don't feel that this Pope, despite what he's done, called for a special tribunal, even in St. Patrick's in Washington, saying that these are crimes, what happened in the church. They don't yet feel that it's being dealt with well enough.
The other thing that he said in St. Patrick's, he talked about the bishop's pain. He called this a difficult moment. My abuse is a difficult moment for the bishops. It's a difficult moment for victims. He talked about the bishop's sacrifice. He talked about the bishop's courage. Bishops want to have courage. They need to post on their websites the names of all predator priests. They need to go for the fight, lobby with us for the SOLs, not against us. That would make a bishop courageous.
The SOL is the statute of limitations,
yes,
which to extend the statute of limitations, which is right now done state by state, and many victims, feel it's the statute of limitations is over before they really have been able to come forward.
Yeah, I didn't come forward till the age of 48, 40 years after my abuse, and that's not unusual. So a victim comes forward and they want to find justice, and they go to the police and they find out they can't charge them criminally, or they can't file a civil suit, and then therefore, what are their choices? And so we think that the church should want to make those laws because that will make children safer.
Tell us what happened to you.
I was abused by a priest in Alexandria, Virginia, from the ages of 9 to 11. He was newly ordained. He came to our parish. Everybody loved him. I loved him. And he befriended our family. He ate dinner at our house. He went on vacation with us. He bought us our first color television. And he used that sort of love and adoration I had for him to start abusing me.
And how long did it take you to, summon the courage to actually tell your parents or confront the church if you ever did?
Well, at the age of 48, I came across a picture of myself with him, and everything came flooding back. And
that was the key.
That was the key, and I remember spending, hours and hours on the bathroom floor praying to God that I just please let me die and not wake up in the morning because it was so painful. And so at that point, I went to the church hoping that they would tell me it wasn't my fault, that I wasn't going to hell for telling on a priest because that's what my perpetrator told me, and that, that I was loved by God. And I didn't get those things from the first priest that I met. So I fell away from God. I fell away from the church. And I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. So another survivor suggested I call SNAP. Well,
we just heard from the state representative who himself was abused when he was 13. He says that he has many friends who were abused by the same priest who have committed suicide. I mean, who in their lives, this is not something that ever goes away.
Yes, we have a list of 100 people that have committed suicide, and those are the only ones we know about. And I guess our concern, too, is not just the victims that have come forward, but what about all those other victims out there who are afraid to?
And Anderson, Becky, everybody, the statistics lead people to believe that as many as 100,000 children here in the United States have been abused in this manner, and that there have been many suicides, but there just hasn't been the accountability. The statistics show, according to reports, that perhaps 4,500 priests have these charges leveled against them, and only several hundred have been held accountable. It's cost the church hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm hearing that some in SNAP, yourself and maybe some others, feel that there should be firings of a large number of priests and bishops.
You know, a priest abuses, and if a bishop would immediately remove that priest and make it public, children will be safer. But instead, they might move them, or they might, you know.
Does that still happen?
Yes.
Yes, that still happens. There was a recent article in the Global Post that came out that said there were 5 credibly accused, proven, or admitted abusers who were allowed to go to South America, and they are actually working in South America.
I saw that Global Post article.
Yeah, and you know,
shocking.
to me that's shocking. All those children, and they're not being protected.
What must this Pope do?
You know, this Pope has to be courageous himself. He can't sit back and say, I'm not going to tell you what to do. He has to demand accountability, and he has to fire or publicly dismiss any bishop who endangers children. We have Bishop Finn, and everyone says, well, look, he resigned, but he was allowed to resign, but not one person said he resigned because he endangered children.
It is an incredibly divisive and appalling scandal that is one reason why so many Catholics have actually lost faith over the last decade plus that this has emerged into the public sphere. As I said, the Pope did he's the first one to create a special tribunal to hold those guilty, those charged accountable. But before the first one was going to stand trial, he died. I did ask Archbishop Joseph Kurtz about this. He's the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and this is what he told me, particularly about the issue of moving those priests who've had charges against them around, as you said, to parishes outside this country. Listen to what he told us.
Do you think this Pope is a Pope who wants to be defined by the culture wars, so to speak? It is almost as if he's saying these issues of sexuality, of the social values, yes, we have to deal with them, but actually there's so much more to deal with in this world.
He's a man of faith. He wants to point to Jesus Christ, and he says, I want to see the person before the idea. You notice that was a theme in Cuba. And he says, you know, the person means that I'm not going to spend all of my energy arguing with someone. I will be true to my convictions. I'll be a son of the church, as he says it. I'm not changing church teaching. But he said, I truly want to engage. I want to learn from that person, and I want to make sure that everyone is welcome. His talks yesterday, he must have said it 36 times. He said, the message of Christ's salvation is meant for all of us, for everyone. And then he said, no one is to be excluded. So he really, I think, is asking us to see that person. And I do believe that brings out the best in people. If cheers are any indication, and we saw a lot of it, including from our brother bishops, that's a sign that he's touching a chord with people, and I kind of like that.
Let me ask you about the message to the bishops, because it was the first time, I don't know whether it'll be the only time, that he deals with the issue of the sexual abuse scandal in the church, which has rocked this church to the point that it sent people out of the church. And obviously the Pope wants to bring people back to the church.
Exactly.
He addressed them as crimes, and he said, this must never happen again.
He did.
But the problem is that many of the victims groups say that actually even the existing laws, the existing protections are not being properly implemented, that there are lots of priests who've been accused who are just being removed from their dioceses or their parishes in the United States and sent over to those in Latin America. Global Post did a big investigation on that. What do you say to people who say the Pope is still not doing this tough enough, is still not taking a tough enough stance?
Well, he uses the term healing. And I think he looks at each person who may be harmed by what he rightly calls a crime of abuse. He talks to the bishops about restoring authority and trust. He uses the word trust. So once again, I think he's focusing on the individual. And each individual is going to be unique. We know that. But the harm done can only be undone by healing. And so I believe our Holy Father is reaching out to people. I can say, I can't speak for every country in the world or even every diocese in the United States, but within the Archdiocese of Louisville, where I serve, we really are intent humbly. But we really are intent in addressing issues. There's no one who is serving within the Archdiocese and no priest or layperson leader who has a credible charge of abuse against them. That's something we should all be doing, and I believe that's the direction that we're going on. And our Holy Father is very, very strong on that. But he does emphasize healing and the fact that we do need to listen to one another.
So that was Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, the Archbishop of Louisville, Kentucky. And there have been questions. We've questioned the Vatican about whether the Pope will meet with victims. And we've been told maybe here in Philadelphia, we're still waiting to see whether that happens.
Becky, what happened to the priest who abused you?
He committed suicide in 1992 after another victim of his approached him.
So when he was confronted by another victim...
Yeah, after he was confronted by another victim, he went to a monastery and said he would talk to the victim when he got back, and he shot himself with a shotgun.
That was in 1992?
Yes, that's correct.
Becky Ianni, I appreciate you being with us and speaking about your experiences. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, there is a lot more to come from here in Philadelphia, a lot of events ahead. We'll bring all of them to you as they happen. Right now, let's go back to Frederica.
All right, some powerful words on a very sensitive topic. And in my conversation with Representative Rossi, he made it very clear he will not be celebrating the Pope's visit there to Philadelphia, not until he hears something much more concrete in his view. That means those who have abused children over the years, those priests, instead of receiving pensions, he says, they should be receiving prison time. All right, we're keeping a close watch on the visit of the Pope there in Philadelphia and other developing stories today, including House Speaker John Boehner sending shockwaves through Washington, announcing that he's giving up the gavel next month. Straight ahead.